120 million minds watching, and then you have the 3 seconds of this UFO beaming someone up and saying, probe me already. That's not doing nothing to the public mind. So interesting. If there was ever a time for UFOs to show up and announce themselves to the world, the other night at Super Bowl LVIII would have been a pretty great opportunity. The game was in Las Vegas, Nevada, one of the biggest UFO hotspots in the world, and not far from Area 51. Unfortunately, no UFOs landed on the field at the game. However, the Super Bowl was not completely without UFOs. Super Bowl LVIII. There was 120 million people watched the game. This set a record. That's a lot of people tuning in. Now, there was only 2 commercials about UFOs and aliens that included that, but they were very interesting. And of course, this is the year of David Grush and the Congress hearings. This was a historic year for UFOs, so it's interesting to keep that in mind. And lastly, what's the messaging? A lot of people tuning in. What is the messaging going to be? So that's what I want to look at here and going to break down today. The first commercial we're going to look at was a commercial for Squarespace, a website building company. And this commercial was directed by Martin Scorsese, who, if you don't know him, he's a huge Hollywood director. He's done just tons of movies. He's like top director. So interesting. Let's have a watch here.
Reports of flying saucers are nothing new.
These are routine sightings, not isolated events.
Are you seeing that? It's spinning. There's a whole swarm of them. Oh, my God. They're all against the wind. All against the wind. Oh, look at this. That's 110, 150.
There was an historic hearing today on Capitol Hill and an unprecedented bipartisan push for UFO transparency.
とにかくまず今日は浜からついてるクリエイティブでビューティフルなコラボレーションをしてる。
I told you to take Broadway. This always happens.
Pretty interesting. Definitely not insignificant with an audience of 120 million tuned in. So at the end of this video, the very end, I'm actually going to play this again and kind of pause it and break it down a little bit, moment by moment, kind of improvising on the spot a little bit. But for now, let's break this down and let's talk a little bit about looking into the context of this. So the main takeaway that kind of I got from it after the first watch was people being distracted by their phones. Obviously, the thing that sticks out is the woman sees the video saying there's proof of UFOs and extraterrestrials, and then she doesn't care. Then she sees a cat video and she gets happy and there's like a UFO flying over. So that theme was very clear there. Nobody realizing that the UFOs are there. So to the sub-bullet point there on the first point, is this message supposed to be like a call for people to wake up? Or is it just a clever marketing ploy? And I think that's my first main question. And maybe it's both. And in the second bullet point, the tagline at the end, a website makes it real. I thought that was interesting. And is this promoting the PSYOP, the psychological operation of the public, still on that question of, are they real? Do they exist? When any critical thinker right now can come to the conclusion for themselves with great confidence that the official authorities have already even acknowledged that they're real. So we're past that. We're actually past that. They're real. The question now is, who are they? What are they? Who knows what's going on? So, a website makes it real. Is that kind of playing into the psyche of, we still don't even know if they're real? Oh, clever commercial. Move on, Don't take the subject too seriously. Maybe. But I don't think it's that simple. We're going to look at some of the background of the commercial now and see. So looking for some further context, here is the chief creative officer for Squarespace. His name is David Lee. In a separate behind-the-scenes video capturing the filming of the commercial, David Lee explains the inspiration for the ad, saying, quote, "One of the most mind-boggling things I've seen this year is that there have definitely been UAPs and UFO sightings. But for some odd reason, no one seems to really be talking about it. They've been trying to get our attention for decades now, but they haven't been able to legitimize themselves, so we figured, what better way to legitimize an alien race than to hit publish and put out a Squarespace website?" This comes from an article on Variety.com, and very interesting. Is he being sincere? Taking him at face value here, I respect it. I got to give him props. He's right, obviously. It is mind-boggling how much facts and evidence and how much the government has taken this seriously with the UAP bill and all this going on, that this should be the biggest story in the world right now. And it's not. It's a footnote at best. So according to what David Lee says, that was his inspiration for making the commercial, to make people think about it and realize, wow, this whole thing's going on and nobody even cares about it. If that was really his intention and that was really the whole vision of it, that's awesome. And props to David Lee for putting that out there with that intention in front of such a huge audience of people watching the Super Bowl. So maybe let's look at a little more. Now, Scorsese directed this. This is not insignificant. He's a huge Hollywood director, and he directed this Super Bowl ad. So Scorsese said in a statement, quote, "At my age, it's a stretch finding a directorial debut," meaning this was his first time directing a Super Bowl ad. "When Squarespace first approached me to create a spot, I thought this was my shot. Let's go big. Let's do something out of this world. Space guys building a website. I'm a New Yorker. We're busy, always on the move. Would we even notice extraterrestrials living among us? It's going to launch on this show called Super Bowl, supposed to be big." And my point is it that simple? Scorsese's clearly writing it off as, hey, this was an opportunity for me to do something new, to kind of have fun with it and just do something experimental. He's not at all playing into what David Lee's saying, where there was a messaging or a kind of a social critique behind it. And to the last point, there was some information on an article on TheRinger.com that his daughter may have inspired him to make it. Now, Scorsese did a full interview with Wired about this, and they're also playing down that it was any kind of social critique. And here they say, Scorsese's Super Bowl spot is a punchy, humorous riff about what would happen if extraterrestrials came to Earth and couldn't get humanity's attention because everyone is lost in their phones. It's funny, but also something Scorsese thinks about. At 81, he says he remembers the transition from radio to television to film and puts a lot of thought into how people from every generation consume visual media. So they're clearly taking an angle that Scorsese's vision for this was how generations consume visual media. It's about our obsession with social media, not about the reality of UFOs, right? So that's what the angle is here. And Scorsese in the interview doesn't talk too much about it, but does go on to say it was meant to be funny and to emphasize how much it would take to get people's attention. So interesting. It's definitely kind of contradicts what the Squarespace's creative officer David Lee said. Scorsese's saying it was more of just the theme was really about the social media and people with technology and visual media. It wasn't about, hey, wake up, look at what's going on out here. Nobody cares about it. Interesting. Avi Loeb was quoted about the commercial on a Fox Business article. They say Harvard professor Avi Loeb, a scientist who has been called the UFO hunter, told Fox News Digital he, quote, loved the ad. And Avi Loeb said, quote, I resonated with its message that most people focus on past knowledge and their daily routines rather than seek new data. So, yeah, Avi, I don't know. People say different things about Avi Loeb, but his things he said have been pretty, seems like he kind of wants to get to the truth, but who knows. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here, of course, we got to think in the full context. What's the bigger picture with mass media? How does this work? Super Bowl ads are no joke. They're really expensive. I think it's like $7 million for 30 seconds. And it's prime time. I mean, like we said, we had 120 million people watching this. So the companies that want to buy ad space have to pay the network that's broadcasting the Super Bowl. So this year it was CBS. And so ultimately CBS would have to approve the ad, because if the ad is something really bad or going to look bad for them, they're not going to approve it, right? So they looked at this and they approved it on some level. That's got to check out all the way to the top. And who owns CBS, right? You can see the logo down there and the all-seeing eye. I don't know. I don't know if maybe there's something deeper behind these organizations. People definitely make those arguments. But anyway, Paramount is owned, the same ownership, CBS and Paramount. And this guy you see in the picture there, Sumner Redstone, who's the world's oldest billionaire right now, and some other movies that Paramount has been involved with, War of the Worlds, Arrival, Star Trek movies, Tom Cruise movies. So kind of interesting to think about, what's their take, what's their agenda if they have one, how did this fit into it, this commercial, which is clearly, addressing the issue head on to a huge audience. And my last bullet point here, just a side thought, I was thinking about what's it going to look like? Imagine the future film productions after disclosure, if we get disclosure, whatever kind of disclosure we get, could be pretty interesting. So always worth thinking about the bigger picture and who's behind the media ultimately. So some questions and reflections about this Martin Scorsese UFO alien commercial on the Super Bowl. What's the motivation behind it? What's the message? I think some of my questions are, is it to normalize the topic for people? Is it to trivialize it? Like, we don't really care, or something along those lines. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to think about. And there's lots of people watching either way, so it's having some kind of impact. And to the third bullet point, we watched the original cut there with the things at the beginning and the little scenes of the government and stuff going on. On the actual aired cut, they took out those clips. So they kind of sanitized it for the public consumption, which is telling in a certain way. And to my last point, a question, what's Scorsese's actual take on UFOs? He clearly took a very neutral and not associating himself with the issue in those interviews, but I wonder what he really thinks to take on something like that. So some final points, analyzing the information we can get here. Scorsese says it was just to be a kind of metaphor to emphasize the power of visual media on people. Then if that's true, why as a director, why would you include all those references to the very real Congress hearings, even though those are actors in the little clip there? Of course, there really was those hearings. And, the Navy videos, why would you include those if this was just meant to be like a metaphor for people's obsession with visual media, right? And if there was nothing deeper and it was meant to just be humorous, why would you include those? That's a point there. To the second point, David Lee, the Squarespace chief creative officer, clearly states his intention was at least partially to question the lack of seriousness around UFOs. And then Scorsese makes no mention of this. So, why is that? And on the third bullet point, a positive note here, the aliens look friendly in the website ad. You can look at that picture there. That's their ad, and they're all smiling and waving. They look very nice. They're not scary looking or threatening. And I actually think that's a good thing. That means this passed through and it's not really showing a narrative of scared, be afraid, when everybody sees the UFOs in the video, which we'll watch it again later, they're kind of like amazed by it and smiling. So that's potentially a good sign. And in my take, I think that this advertisement leans toward a pro-peaceful disclosure kind of narrative, but nothing is that simple. Nothing's so black and white. It's this or that. I find it's always usually a mix of everything. The bottom line is 120 million people were watching. That is powerful, and it's worth thinking about. So the second commercial was a Mountain Dew commercial that showed an alien abduction scene. Let's take a look at it.
Having a blast. Winning. Losing. Having a... Probe me already. Blast. I can have a blast anytime, anywhere.
So that's the one that aired. You saw it was just like a second of her getting beamed up, and she says, probe me already. Interesting. There was another one, this one here, that's extended. This didn't make the cut, and there's more that happens. Let's watch.
Having a blast. Getting abducted by aliens? Having a blast. This part always takes a while. Yep, having a blast. Bring it, Jade. Having...
So yeah, in that one, she's waiting. She says this part always takes a while, and it's kind of like being humorous and
having a blast.
Maybe even trivializing the topic a little bit. So you can interpret that. However, in my reflection here, yes, it's very short, but it's still a conscious decision to include that. You still have potentially 120 million minds watching, and then you have the 3 seconds of this UFO beaming someone up and saying, probe me already. That's not doing nothing to the public mind. So interesting. Is this a very subtle programming of some kind? Is this to trivialize or normalize this? And to my last point, are the reality of abductions potentially a phase one of a controlled disclosure? And I think maybe, because it would support this kind of fear-based narrative. I think to some extent, certain powers that are behind controlling public perception of the world probably want to maintain a little bit of a fear in the public to control it. And the abduction thing is definitely weird. It's definitely threatening to people, probing people. Like, it's not something that people get excited about. So it's interesting to think that, maybe that's why they threw it in there. Maybe it's just somebody having fun. But nevertheless, I think it's significant that it's going in there like that. And remember, whoever controls the media controls the mind. That's a quote at once attributed to the lead singer for the classic rock band The Doors, Jim Morrison. Of course, other people have alluded to the same idea, Noam Chomsky and others, but it's true. It's true. It has a huge effect on us, and no better time than the Super Bowl. So think about it. Let me know what you think about these commercials. Think it's pretty interesting. And yeah, if there was ever a time for them to land on the field and announce themselves, it would have been a good time maybe at the Super Bowl the other night. It was right by Area 51. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you want to stick around now, I'm going to play the video again now and just pause it and maybe analyze a little bit more that we might miss in the first take. So a second look at the Squarespace commercial. So interesting take at the beginning. The Earthlings must be stopped. We must make contact. So the narrative is not we're coming to invade and take over. It's we have to stop the humans from messing up whatever they're messing up. And so we have to make contact. So that's actually like kind of a neutral, leaning towards positive take on ET intentions. It's not a threat, fear-based narrative. That scene right there is not insignificant. Remember, Scorsese's directing this. Every decision in a production is very carefully thought about and chosen. flying saucer. Air Force uncovers model mystery ship, showing people the reality to this.
Reports of flying saucers are nothing new.
These are routine sightings, not isolated events.
They show the Nazca mummy. They show the mock of the David Grush hearing. These are routine sightings, not isolated events.
Are you seeing that?
That's the actual gimbal video of the Navy. And of all the videos that came out, 3 or however many that have been officially recognized as Navy videos, U.S. official military videos, the gimbal video is the most fascinating to me. And I actually plan to do a whole video on the gimbal video because it's crazy. It's literally a flying saucer caught on the military camera. People say, why don't we have videos? It's right there. It's right there. And the government has told you that it's an actual military video. And it's one of the craziest videos. I think it's the most significant one.
Spinning. There's a whole swarm of them. Oh my God. They're all against the wind. All against the wind.
And that's a reference. See that quote right there? They're all against the wind that he said. That's a reference to the Go Fast video. If you've seen that one where it's flying over the ocean and they're all laughing and they're like, what the hell is that? It's going this fast against the wind. So now, of course, yeah, you have the UFOs flying overhead, people on their phone.
Oh, look at this. That's 110, 150.
She goes from a proof of extraterrestrials clip and she swipes past it to something mindless and laughing at it and the UFO flying. That resonated for me because, hey, I can't help it. I know everybody is where they're at, and that's fine. And I'm not going to hold it against everyone, but it gets frustrating, that it's just people. We've been this distracted that we can't even think seriously about something that so clearly has a real authenticity to it, and we rather just be distracted by kind of things that make us not think.
There was an historic hearing today on Capitol Hill and
Another shot that tells me they were going for a critical angle here, and Scorsese's saying it was just meant to be funny, but I don't know. There's the newsreel of someone saying there was a historic UFO hearing, and she's more interested in a celebrity bacon diet.
unprecedented bipartisan push for UFO transparency.
とにかくまず今日は浜からついてるクリエイティブでビューティフルなコラボレーションをしてる
This is kind of interesting, and actually the funny part to me about it, the alien gets frustrated that nobody's paying attention, and I thought that's kind of an interesting take with the humor. It's humorous, and it also offers a social critical angle on it. Again, like I said before, they appear friendly, and that's a good sign, I think. A good sign in the sense of how is mainstream media going to portray this to us, and I'm hoping it's not the fear, threat, control you thing. I'm hoping it's like at least partially true and neutral, if anything, maybe positive. We'll see. Now they've been interrupted enough to look off their phones and look up. And I think this is key. They could have chose to make her be scared. They could have chose to make her be neutral, but she's clearly happy and amazed by it. And so, I don't know. Is that good messaging? Is that something else? I don't know. Everybody's smiling, you know? Nobody was scared.
I told you to take Broadway. This always happens.
That part, when I watched it for the first time, that part really stuck out to me as potentially the messaging of like, get used to it, people. Like, this is just going to be another part of our life. Maybe that's not the intention, but that's the messaging that I think is potentially there, and that kind of came across to me initially as like, it's just going to be traffic again. All this happens all the time. I don't know. Is this seeding something in the public mind? A lot of people watching this. And then the website makes it real type of thing. Maybe at the same time, they're hedging their bets and making sure people don't take it too seriously, right? Remember, we still don't know if it's real. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think. And again, I just found this really interesting. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.